Greetings, brothers and sisters. One of my viewers, or a few of my viewers, have asked me when I say that I'm going to cook dinner or something like that, what I cook, right? And so I mentioned in my Journey Series video yesterday, which should be released this weekend, I want to talk about that. I'm going to mostly talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. That's the theme of this video. But anyways, this is mung beans and paneer and butter chicken. We had for years used this mung bean and paneer recipe back when my family and I were vegetarians, my former family, and I learned how to cook this. I have a few Indian dishes I can cook, but I don't really, cook Indian food very much. And I was making the mung bean and paneer every once in a while, and we would also get some butter chicken from a local Indian restaurant, which is very good, but it always seemed to make me sick, and we've eaten at that Indian restaurant. They have like a lunch buffet, and I usually don't feel that great after eating there, so I wanted to make butter chicken using organic ingredients and find a good recipe. And this is the second time I made it. It's just so much better than the stuff we've had at like restaurants. The recipe, let me see if I can find the recipe is, the video's called How to Make the Creamiest Butter Chicken. And it's just filled with spices. They want you to make your own garam masala, and I'm just not into that. I don't make my own spice. We grow some spices occasionally, but nothing like this. But anyways, I thought I'd share that. I put it up on Instagram as well. I really like mung beans because you can make them into sprouts. They can serve as food for, it's high protein food for livestock. They store very well, and when you cook them, they expand like by 2, 3, 4 times. They make that you can store the dried beans. You soak them overnight, and they, when you cook them, they make a lot more food. You can squish some of them. They make a nice paste to go, whatever. That's neither here nor there. So before I get to the Black Panther, I have this Journey Series video out where I talk about just ending in every possible way my relationship with Daji and the Heartfulness organization in a different way. I have this meditation that I talk about. It's it's a long video, and I document a lot of he's taken to another level of suckiness, right? For those of you who listen to my Journey Series video. And I just want to say there'll be a lot of people, I think Christians particularly, who will think I'll be coming to Christianity or whatever and that's not going to happen, right? It's, I'm changing what I did before for the reasons I expressed in the video, because there's been a corruption in the system and, more stuff to go in it's a long video, and I explain at the end. I had this sitting and whatever it is. But I'm not going back to kindergarten, right? There's religions don't deliver what Sahaj Marg used to. It's unfortunate that the current master of the system has kind of wrecked the system and, all the things I talk about in the Journey Series. But that doesn't mean I'm going to regress and go to a religion, which is even a further step backwards. Like when, a spiritual person has a direct connection with God, and I'll pursue that through, what I've learned from the Heartfulness, from the Sahaj Marg system, which has been wonderful for me, which I'm very grateful for. I just, recognize that the system is toxic for me right now. And, I get into this in much more descriptive type of situation. The system and the master of the system isn't helping me the way it used to. And, it's, actually hurting me. But that doesn't mean I'm going to regress and do something else, right? So please, I meant to put that in the narration. I'm already uploading the video. It's going to take a while for it to clear customs. YouTube does this checking of videos, and the longer videos, it takes longer time. But it'll be up probably tomorrow night, which will be Friday night or Saturday morning or this weekend or whatever it is. And so I'm just letting people know that don't try to recruit me, right? You might have your own opinion of Sahaj Marg, that's fine, and you don't like that I did it and whatever, you want me to do your thing. That's not what's on the table, right? It's just me accepting the reality of the situation, and the organization is just, went crazy, right? Bat, boop, crazy. And because of the the current master and his corruption and all the people around him. But anyways, let's get into the Wakanda stuff here. Okay, so I'm going to get to the Wakanda Forever in a moment. I just want to do a little bit of Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. There's a video of a CDC employee acknowledging vax, like the vax-related injuries and things. And I'm not sure if that's a hoax because I looked into it and I couldn't find it anywhere. And the guy who they say it is doesn't have any real pictures out there that could verify it's him, that he works for the CDC. So, but the video's out there. So I didn't cover that here, but I might a day or so. But let's start here. 8th grader goes into cardiac arrest at game, then trainer rushes in South Carolina school. An 8th grader went into a cardiac arrest at a basketball game. Then a trainer rushed in to help. The trainer, Chris Young, spent 10 minutes performing CPR on the middle school student, Kamari Williams, as the two waited for first responders, according to Southside Christian School. So I guess he saved his life, but they're mentioning Damar Hamlin here. This is an 8th grader. U.S. FDA removes COVID test requirements for Pfizer and Merck pills. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration on Wednesday removed the need for positive tests for COVID treatments from Pfizer Inc. and Merck Inc. so that you can get these pills even if you haven't tested positive for COVID. Former WWE star Lanny Poffo dies at 68. He was the brother of Macho Man Randy Savage, and I don't believe it has a cause of death yet. Groundhog Day tragedy, Fred Lamont, Canada's Punxsutawney Phil, drops dead on his big day. Even the groundhogs are dropping like flies. So this person, Yasmin Vusagan, somebody sent me this. I'll show you her thing again. But this is her reaction to the vaccines when they first came out.
We're actually seeing Dr. Christian Arbor. He just took a seat. He was standing right next to me to get an interview, but he actually was ushered over there to get the first vaccine in the state of Rhode Island.
State of Rhode Island. He's rushing in to get it.
Woo! Hey. Woo-hoo. And some cheering there as that coronavirus vaccine is
there she is applauding.
Administered. And Yasmin, we're clapping right along with you and everyone there.
Yasmin, we're clapping right along with you and everyone there. Yasmin was clapping. She was applauding the vaccine. How'd that work out for you, Yasmin? Let's remember this just for a couple days ago.
I know from my Twitter feed that many of you have wondered why I have been off the air for a little while.
But you're a clapper. You were joyfully clapping.
Well, I have been dealing with a little bit of a health scare. On December 20th, I began to feel chest pains, and they waxed and waned over a period of 10 days. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, but as they continued to get worse, I started to think something was actually wrong.
And some cheering there as that coronavirus vaccine is...
It was December 30th when I finally went to an urgent care and was told I had reflux. I didn't really buy it, but I was relieved it wasn't.
It's a good thing because it wasn't true.
My heart. My body, though, was pretty certain not to believe.
Her body knew that the doctor was full of boop.
The reflux. The next day, on December 30th, I woke up with severe pains both in my chest and in my left shoulder, and it was like a tightening in my chest. When I took deep breaths, that got worse when I was laying flat. I knew enough at that moment to understand that it could mean, could is the key word here, that I was having a heart attack, especially because it was happening in the left part of my shoulder.
And some cheering there as that coronavirus vaccine is...
I want to remind you, I run 7 miles 3 to 4 times.
She does. She wants to remind you, in case you didn't know. Good thing you reminded me because I never even heard you. I've seen her before. To know her name, she pops up on MSNBC from time to time.
Week where I did. I do yoga. I don't eat meat.
She's a yogi.
I don't smoke. I drink occasionally. Not right now, though, because my doctor tells me I can't.
Because I'm dying.
Aside from probably not getting enough sleep and working too much, I'm a pretty healthy person. But on that day, I was anything but. My husband drove me to the emergency room, and from there, the nightmare that has been my January began.
And some cheering there as that coronavirus vaccine is
I was diagnosed with pericarditis, inflammation
Again, wrong.
of the lining of my heart, brought on by a virus.
No way. The virus, a vax virus.
Literal common cold. I also had fluid around my heart that had to be drained, or else it could hinder the beating of my heart. I was hospitalized for 4 nights and transferred from a local hospital to NYU Langone here in New York City. On January 4th, I was finally discharged after doctors drained the fluid around my heart, and I bounced out of the hospital. I couldn't get out of there fast enough with the hopes I was on the mend. But that was not the end.
and some cheering there as that coronavirus vaccine is
3 days later, I was readmitted when I felt a flutter in my heart, like a butterfly. It was inside my chest.
Butterflies are free to fly.
They determined I had developed myocarditis, inflammation of the actual heart now, the heart muscle. I remember
Kaboom. Okay, so we know how this all worked out. But you're a clapper. Clap on, clap off. The clapper.
and some cheering there as that coronavirus vaccine is
So I was pretty stunned by some of the racist tropes in the Black Panther, which is supposed to be some kind of woke consciousness movie, and how racist it was, and in very weird ways. And so there are 3 things I want to focus on here, right? And I'm going to show you all the video clips, and then I'll give my analysis, and I'll talk about watching the movie and all these things. And so there's a character called the Man-Ape, M'Baku, a supervillain appearing in the American comic books published by Marvels, created by Roy Thomas and Jay Buscema. So let's take a look at Roy Thomas for a second. So this is Roy Thomas, a white guy, right? Just like, Hilaria Baldwin Thomas Baldwin. People with Thomas English Muffin. Here he's seated with Stan Lee, right? And this is John Buscema, right? 2 nerdy-looking white guys who created the Black Panther. And so, he's being celebrated as the first sort of, black superhero, and by the, woke community, African-American community and the woke community. But it's so racist because you have this character here who is, this is him right here, right? So he's a supervillain, Man-Ape, and he is, they use this Man-Ape as a character. He is in a guerrilla cult, so he plotted to usurp the throne of Wakanda with the help of an outlawed rival white guerrilla cult, and return to Wakanda to a primitive state. He wants to get rid of the technology and go back to some sort of primitive state. This is the guy who plays him in the movies. We'll get into that in a moment. I got a bunch of clips to show you. Here he is here, right? And there's a gorilla theme they worship gorillas, gorilla gods, and even Hanuman. And I'll get into all that in a moment, which is just weird, right? And it's filled with racist tropes. The other thing I want to talk about is spears, because there are a lot of spear fights in both of the Black Panther movies, but this one specifically. And they not only the Wakanda has spears, but so the Submariner, the guy used to be called the Submariner, Namor, also has a lot of spears, right? And there's just it's just a spear thing. We'll get into that because that's really weird on top of it, right? Here's so Wakanda is supposed to be the most technologically advanced civilization. And they make a point to point out that it's more technologically advanced than America. And they have spaceships, and spaceships that have the ability to retrieve people, to suck them up out of the water or other places into their spaceship. And They have, they're just what the idea here. The premise is that this stuff called vibranium was a meteor hit this place in Africa, and there's this stuff called vibranium there, and Wakanda was built with the vibranium has all these wonderful properties, almost like a smart metal, and because of that, they developed a technologically advanced civilization, but they were hiding it away by acting like a primitive country, and they have their own disguising mechanisms, and now it's become public that they have all these technological breakthroughs, and everyone in the world wants their vibranium, right? But they have the weaponry to fight against that, right? But somehow in that they chose to make vibranium spears be their primary weapon by their superior guards here.
As a world leader, that's a responsibility that.
And so they have this, the vibranium, and they have all this technological advanced stuff, and then they're using spears, which seems, also kind of like a racial trope, right? The next thing I want to show you is this character here, the guy who plays Watson and the Hobbit.
All right, where am I?
Don't scare me like that, colonizer.
Colonizer?
What? My name is Everett.
Yes, I know. Everett Ross.
She knows his name. She's the new Black Panther. She was the most annoying character, maybe the most annoying character in the Marvel Universe. But in real life, she's anti-vax, so I had to give her, a pass, right? But she became the new Black Panther. And the movie's god-awful, like, aside from these racial tropes, I'll get into some of the plot flaws and things. But they call this guy colonizer, but they call all white people colonizers, so I want to get into that as well. So this is Howard Cosell, right? This is going to come back around when I get into the narrative portion of the video. And he said this when I was a little kid. I heard it, and it affected me in my worldview. What happened next?
And that little monkey gets loose, doesn't it?
So he said, that little monkey gets loose. They put music to it, but I couldn't find the raw version. He said it a number of times, but then finally he got in trouble for it. So we're going to come back around to that. But let's get into some of the clips from the movie. The first thing is, this is Mumbaktu's kingdom. And you see they've carved out two huge gorilla statues because there's some sort of gorilla worship, which we'll get into. They come out with this, right?
You need more space. So what? You are visitors.
So you can see from the back he has a gorilla hide on. So the new Black Panther comes in, and she's just made herself into the new Black Panther. And they're having to test his strength. And while she's doing that, his group, his clan is making ape sounds. This happens throughout the movie. I think it must have happened throughout the first movie as well. But I really noticed it. I'm like, wow, this is effed up, right?
She has done it.
So here's a good contrast. The Mbaktu character is fighting with a club, and the Shuri character is driving a spaceship. Then he beats his chest like a gorilla.
These men should be ashamed to show their faces.
Watch your tone, Jabari.
Again, making these ape-like sounds, right? This happens throughout these are just some of the things I remembered and could pull these clips.
The princess has been brought home by the war dog, the Kia.
Glory to Hanuman.
Glory to Hanuman.
Now that this beautiful nation has decided to embrace the world by coming out of its self-imposed seclusion, it would be my honor to represent the people of Wakanda. Wakanda forever.
So the guy says, glory to Hanuman. Well, Hanuman is the Indian monkey god, which apparently that's who is their god, right? That's he's saying glory to God. So for them, Hanuman is their god. And Hanuman is an Indian god who is a monkey and not an ape, right? Gorillas, orangutans, gibbons, and chimpanzees are all apes, primates, and they don't have tails. And we have like ancestral connection, right? We have the most common DNA that we have is with chimpanzees and the other apes, whereas monkeys have tails. And Hanuman is an Indian monkey god that lived 200,000 years ago in the time of the Ramayana. And he could make himself into a giant. He could grow, massively, and had all these strengths and powers, and, was evolved in the Ramayana, which was the prequel to the Mahabharata, right? So it's culturally wrong because Hanuman's from India and they're in Africa. Wakanda is in Africa. It's two completely different things, right? But when I was watching this, when I was a little kid, this Howard Cosell calling this football player, who was a black African-American football player, a little monkey, was my first understanding that there was racial tensions, right? Like I didn't know that up to then because I saw the game and then I saw the controversy afterwards. And I think Howard Cosell either got fired or suspended or whatever it was because he called a black person a monkey. And I didn't have any understanding of that. Back then, the reason I know all this stuff about apes and primates is because I was like a little kid. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a naturalist. This guy Marlon Perkins, Mutual of Omaha. He was like a prequel to the crocodile hunter guy. The guy from much less hands on, right? Less dramatic. All these things. But I love to study animals. We had a cyclopedia from the Museum of Natural History, which I love to go to. We lived in Connecticut. We had to drive to New York to go to the Museum of Natural History and the Bronx Zoo. Took a couple of trips there. We had a whole set of encyclopedias. I had other encyclopedias. And I went to the library. I was dyslexic and I had problems in school. But when they tested me when I was like 7 or 8, I had like a senior level vocabulary and comprehension ability because I just went to the library on my own and read about animals or read about them at home, right? And we had these two big giant maps that were topographical maps in our attic, and I would go sit on them and study them. Like they were big plastic maps with mountains, and they were not just the maps, but they had the actual the topography, right? And and I would just study the maps. And my dad promised me to take me on safari, go to India or Africa or something. My dad was a guidance counselor who, when we went on a boat for a little while or other things, he suffered severe seasickness and car sickness and had to take Dramamine pills. Like the chances of him going to one of these things, but he made me these promises with the hopes that when I got old enough, I would realize he was full of boop, like we were never going to. But those were my things, right? And so when I was a kid and I heard that like black people didn't want to be called compared to monkeys, like I couldn't understand it because like I thought animals were, I liked animals better than people or whatever. I found them more interesting or whatever it was, right? But then, it was explained, and that's when I first understood what's now called racial tropes and these types of things. Like and I didn't even know. When you're a little kid, you don't know there's differences. You don't know that people look at people differently because of the color of their skin. I mean, at some point you become conscious of that. And that's when I became conscious of it. And it was that black people didn't want to be compared to monkeys. And so years later, I'm watching this movie and I had this spiritual experience, which I'm covering in my Journey series. I had this wonderful transmission and sitting and, and it happened without connection through the Heartfulness organization, the current master of the system, right? And so I've made this, decision based in that, and it was a wonderful experience. And I was watching this movie, and my wife came home late, so I was, in this state, and was in a clear-minded state. And, you know, I have this association with the Marvel movies because I read comic books when I was a kid. I read some of the Black Panther comic books, some of the Luke Cage Power Man comic books. Those were the two black heroes that Marvel presented, right? And, you know, I grew up reading these comic books when I was, you know, really young. And they started making comic book movies, and the Spider-Man movies sucked, and the Fantastic Four movies sucked, and, you know, the Silver Surfer one, which I really liked the Silver Surfer character. They messed that up, right? There was just all these, the movies sucked, right? But then my kids started to watch the Marvel movies, the Avengers and things, and they were like, yeah, they're really good. And when we were in India, my ex had left. We started going to the movies together. Well, when my mom died, my ex was just being selfish, and she was like, she had some meeting that she wanted to go to. Like my mom just died, and I was like, please go, right? Because it was just a relief not to have her there. And I just sat on the computer. I watched Guardians of the Galaxy, which was, kind of funny movie. I kind of enjoyed it. And my kids and I, after my ex left us in India, started to go to these Marvel movies. And it was something that we could talk about, something that we, shared, whatever it was. And it was, when we were in India, there wasn't much of an American life. There's everything is, there's more and more globalist kind of stuff going on where there's American foods and things, American style malls. But other than that, we were, partially missing America. So every Tuesday we go to the movies, and that was when the Marvel movies were good and they were in the movie theater. And, we enjoyed doing that. It was something we could talk about, whatever it was. But then they came out with the Black Panther movie, and, the woke consciousness was going, and even worse, the Captain Marvel movie, the feminist movie. They started to get preachy, right? They started to get like stupid and goofy. And the universe just imploded. The last couple of Avengers movies sort of were a letdown, especially the very last one. Long, tedious to get through. And they were just going all woke. Marvel became a part of Disney, and they just got all goofy the way Disney does, right? All these things happen. And, I enjoy this for whatever reason. Just like I enjoyed the apocalypse. I find it funny when things collapse, like I've talked about this before. I found it funny when the Star Wars universe collapsed and now the Marvel universe. So I'm watching this movie just absolutely suck, and I'll talk about it sucking. But then I noticed that they're, comparing these guys are embracing this gorilla motif. And I know that, that's a racial trope. We all know it. And like, how am I the only person seeing this? Am I the only person seeing this, right? Like it's supposed to be an empowering movie. And then there's the spear part, right? Because, spears aren't that great. Spears are, they're hard to throw. They're hard to control. They're not very fast. Arrows are better. Spears are, I don't know, maybe as good as a sword, possibly in, some circumstances. But as soon as they developed guns, bullets were better, right? That's why guns, that's why these so-called colonizers won, because they had guns, they had bullets, they had superior technology that created the, expansion of the British Empire, the European empires into these other places, because they developed these weapons, right? These weapons where they could shoot people from long distance, and it's just not fair, and you can't fight it with spears and swords or anything else, right? That's why those things have more or less disappeared, because guns are way better. And Wakanda had much better weapons. They have all kinds of stuff. I can't even, name all the things. They have this technological superiority. And they're using spears, which is weird because that's also a racial trope, right? And so I'm sitting there watching this going, why is this being celebrated as it's very demeaning? And these characters were created by white guys, right, originally. I know the movie's directed, I think, written by a black guy, but, they've kept all these characters, and they have a guy who's, worships Hanuman and gorillas and apes, and they make ape sounds. And then they're using spears. Just, am I the only one that sees this? Like, what's happening here? It's like it's being celebrated as some sort of black empowerment. And then they call the white people colonizers, which is just, factually wrong, because not every white person's a colonizer. But on a, deeper level, I've talked about kings also. They're the kings and queens, of Wakanda. They still have a royal system, and that's inherently racist, because it's not just racist, but it's a bloodline thing. And it's said by people's blood, they're superior and have to, and are born to rule, as opposed to competing for leadership. Again, it's not like it works out great in the democracy side either, the way corruption works, but bloodlines is never a good thing and are basically racist, right? The whole idea that people are superior based in their blood, their genetics. And so that's, like I've talked about that before. But calling like all white people colonizers, and it's said throughout, and there's the group of the Submariner guy, the Namor character is kind of the villain, has got an underwater civilization, and they have vibranium, and they have this technology as well, right? They have their own technological developments, and they develop these ways to enhance human beings, which is part of the whole Marvel thing, right? Which makes superheroes. But black people and Hispanic people and Asian people and people all around the world took slaves and conquered other peoples. And so colonization has been, animals do this, right? Animals take over other animals' territory. It's, there's a territorial warlike quality in the human, not just human, in the animal kingdom. It is the way it is. There's violence, and it's just that way. And then there's slaves, even in the animal kingdom. The exploitation of other creatures' work, right? Animals figure out how to benefit from other creatures' work and take over their, there's like birds that will have, birds who will destroy all the eggs and lay their own eggs and have other birds raise their birds, like catbirds and sparrows and things. There's all this stuff. And there's been slaves taken by native tribes all over the world. And there was African tribes that sold black slaves to white slave traders. So this, there's all these things, right? This is a part of the human condition. White people developed, bullets and strategies, and so they were better at colonization, ships, whatever they did, right? And so to call all white people colonizers is also, if you're going to say a race white people have the more predisposition towards dominance and, war and things like this, and I'm not saying that isn't true, but once you start saying that about one race, then you start saying things about other races, right? Because you're going to say that people based in their race have certain predispositions, and, that's where you get into these divisions, right? And it just ends poorly. So to call all white people colonizers, and then just all these tropes and stuff, just a bizarre movie. But the movie really, really, really sucks. It's maybe the worst Marvel movie. The Black Panther was the sixth highest grossing movie at $800 million of 2022. Very popular movie. And it's like horrible. And I'm just going to say two things, spoiler alert, right? And so there is this enhanced ability to enhance the Black Panther through these special flowers that glow with light, and it's a whole thing, right? And, with these enhanced people, you're going to have an enhanced immune system, because then they have this stuff in the Marvel Universe where Captain America was an enhanced person, and Wolverine had this, mutation where he could heal himself, right? So there's, having a good immune system is part of that, right? Strong immune system. So they open the movie because Chadwick Boseman didn't tell Marvel he had cancer when he signed this deal with them, and they were expecting him to make this sequel, and he just died, and they didn't have anything, right? They didn't have any footage. They didn't have anything that would show his death. And so he's sick, and then the Suri character, his sister, is trying to heal him because she's the most brilliant scientific mind in the world or something. And she, is very snotty about it. She can't heal him, and he dies of a cold off screen, some kind of disease, right? And she couldn't recreate the flower and heal him or whatever it is, even though he's got this enhanced human ability. because it's a huge plot flaw just built in because the guy died without any, even if they got some kind of footage of him, even when he was sick or something, but they didn't have any of that, right? But in the end of the movie, she's fighting Namor. And again, spoiler alert, and Namor spears her right through her belly, right in the center of her belly. And the spear sticks to she's stuck to like some wall or whatever, tree or something. And, there's a whole thing about revenge and the previous villain, all these things. But she's been speared by this guy. And she decides to fight back. So she breaks off the spear, gets herself off the thing, and her vibranium suit seals the hole because it's magic like that, right? It's a part of this whole superhero stuff. And, she's been speared through her belly, a deathly wound. And Namor, they figure out that water keeps him strong. And even though he's right next to like an ocean, he's fighting her. And he never goes and recharges in the ocean for a few seconds, right? He's got these wings on his feet that are just really ridiculous. He's got these two little small wings on his feet that worked in the comic book, but in real life looks really stupid, especially, when you're not a kid, right? And she breaks one of the wings, and so he can't fly over there. He's all weak, and he's trying to make it to the ocean, and she pulls a spear out, and she goes, beats him or whatever it is. But the spear came out, and it's never mentioned again. Like, there's no healing process. Like, she's not there's no bandage around her belly. She's just it never happened. Like, she's been speared. And so she has that level of healing ability, but her brother couldn't fight off COVID or whatever he died of. And then, Namor tries to win her over in the beginning and brings her to the underwater kingdom. And he gives her an ultimatum. Either they go wipe out all the colonizers, all the people on the surface people together, or he goes to war with them, which seems really strange because they're the two most powerful countries, even though they fight with spears. I mean, the whole movie, there's just so many plot holes and just, bad characters and just wrong thinking. I mean, it's a horrible movie. Anyways, I continue this on. I talk about my spiritual experience in my Journey Series 87 that's coming out. And just whole transformational things happen with that. But I'm going to end this for now. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.